Hello, everyone. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. So glad to have you with us. We've got Jeff Sintel here as well, Dog Nation's recruiting insider. A lot to talk about today in terms of where things are going with Georgia's 2020 class, who could be the next to commit to the G. We like to talk about that thing from here from time to time. We'll check in on some of the performances of UGA commits thus far during their senior seasons of high school. And I guess, Jeff, here kind of off the top, just for a little bit, we'll also talk about a recruit that's kind of, and we mentioned this briefly last week, but a recruit that's kind of emerged on the scene. I don't want to say out of nowhere necessarily, but certainly more chatter within the last maybe 10 to 14 days than there would have been in the last 4 months prior to that.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you have to kind of, I'd imagine if somebody missed last week's show, Brandon, they're like, who's Dante Manning? What's he all about? It's funny that Georgia has reached the stages of its recruiting. You know, we weren't talking about him maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but we kind of learned Dante Manning maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I first put it in the Hurry Up thread in the Dog Nation forum that there's something cooking right there. And first of all, you want to open up the Dante Manning file, and you're talking about a top 100 recruit. Brandon, the 24/7 Sports, the pure 24/7 Sports rating has him as the number 3 overall corner and the number 30 overall recruit. Mm-hmm. Now, the composite skews that to number 7 and number 99 overall, but man, I put together a listicle, what I like to call it, of things to really catch your eye about Manning besides this junior film that's already got a lot of juice.
Yeah, at Kansas City, you see some of the film there, and so I guess with that in mind, I guess tell us some more of the things we need to know about Manning here.
First of all, look at that highlight. Look at the long strider. He's a track guy, 10.67 in the 100-yard dash. He's a track medalist. He's an all-state track performer in Missouri. He plays both ways, offense, defense, special teams. He's an Under Armour All-American. In fact, I think we've got a graphic that kind of lists a lot of these info bits about Dante Manning. You can see, he's an Under Armour All-American. He will make a decision and silent commit during the early period, but then he will not announce that until the Under Armour All-American game. He's not an early enrollee, and this is the part Brandon wants to pay close attention to. He's a former Oklahoma commit. Mm-hmm. He's already taken official visits to Oklahoma and Texas A&M.
Okay.
He's planning the Georgia official visit in December.
Okay.
That perks everybody's ears up around here.
Uh-huh.
And then Oregon and LSU seem like they're going to get the other 2 officials. Got great character, Brandon. We're going to have a story on him in the next couple of days on DogNation.com. Got that great off-field character, strong personality. Checks a lot of boxes for what you're looking for with an ideal Georgia defensive back target.
So let me ask just a very basic question and set you up to talk about this a little bit more. Scholarships are limited for Georgia right now. There's no doubt that Manning's a really good player, but why are we talking about him now? What has preceded this that has led to this?
Well, to me it feels like, there's always going to be 2 or 3 names, Brandon, in that best player available category, which will get around to Scholarship 21, Scholarship 22, and Scholarship 23. And I think Manning is good enough to be beyond that. But in terms of Georgia and how tight this class is going to be, remember we had that phase, I guess, early in the season where Elias Ricks was a name to really look too strongly because there was some juice there. There was some strong interest there, even on both parties with the LSU commit. That's the nation's number 2 cornerback commit. And then you see, I don't know, I can see a plausible finish to this class where, maybe Gervon Dexter sticks with Florida because Florida, has a 10-2 type season. And then what happens with Jordan Birch? Then what happens does Georgia get both tight ends in this class? Do they get a fire and ice? Do they go find 2 running backs in that class? All of a sudden, some of those dominoes do fall or do not fall for Georgia. And when you've got Dante Manning as a player to think about there with an Arian Smith, with a Zacchaeus Walker, that's going to be, Dante Manning, folks, look at that film. He is a very good football player, an All-American football player. You can see why the pure 24/7 Sports rating has him in 5-star territory. And another reason why we're talking about Dante Manning today is pretty simple. On Monday, he came out with a top 10 list that said, these are my 10 schools. These are the ones I'm looking at. My recruitment is closed except to these 10 schools. So then you go beyond that, Brandon, and you learn that, okay, Oklahoma, former commitment, already got an official. Texas A&M, that's a school that everybody's linking him to right now. They've gotten an official. Only has 3 left, and he knows he's taking an official visit to Georgia. That, to me, gets my ears up, as there's some strong potential for the chances of Georgia with Dante Manning down the road in this class.
Hard to think about Manning in this context without also thinking about what happened to Georgia last Saturday, where Kirby Smart postgame, after a Georgia blowout win, but in a moment with the Tennessee wide receivers, had some success getting open against Georgia defensive backs. Smart, after the game, talked a lot about the amount of pressure they put on their defensive backs to be in tight coverage and to run step for step with wide receivers, to be physical at the line of scrimmage. Georgia has certainly wanted to increase its havoc rate. That means more sacks, more tackles for loss. Sometimes that means dialing up blitz pressure when you have that extra pass rusher coming in, or at least one extra pass rusher coming in. That means there's not as much safety help to go around for defensive backs. So making sure that you maintain a pipeline of cornerbacks, especially, that can run step for step with the best receivers in the SEC, that is a conversation that I expect us to be having for a number of years. If you want to have a national championship level program, you have to have the top level defensive backs to be able to be as aggressive with your front seven as you want to be. And I'm guessing that's also part of the reason we're talking about Manning right now, as well as maybe a brief flirtation with Elias Ricks and certainly Keely Ringo, who Georgia fans have circled as a part of the 2020 class, and Jalen Kimber as well. Kirby Smart loves defensive backs, but given the style of play that Georgia seems committed to right now, that makes defensive backs even more important, does it not?
Yeah, and you got to look. Remember, I like to take us through the breadth and the timeline of names for the 2020 class. Remember, Avante Williams was a name at safety.
Right.
You remember other names in this class. You know, of course, Jalen Kimber is in the class. Keely Ringo is a mainstay, alpha priority target for Georgia in the class. And then you start thinking about Elias Ricks, Henry Gray. What about, another name that stays on everybody's radar just a tad is Nadab Joseph.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like the defensive back picture for Georgia is evolving. Could only be 2, maybe at the most 3 names. And when you have to match which with Ohio State's receiving core, Clemson's receiving core, and Alabama's receiving core going forward, folks, make no bones about it. Ohio State next year is bringing in the greatest collection of wide receivers I've ever seen. So if Georgia's going to play big December ball games against the Buckeyes or the Clemson Tigers in the future, they're going to need an elite cadre of defensive backs that are going to be able to match. Manning's 6'1", about 6 feet and a half, 185 pounds, got the size, could also play the star really fast. Look how he makes plays all over in the field. That's a name to know, and I guess that's the thing to focus on here, Brandon.
Yeah.
I know everybody is getting a little testy. I read that stuff in the Dog Nation forum. It's been 54 days since a 2020 commit for Georgia. If anybody can tell me the last 2020 commit for the Bulldogs, I'd love to hear it in the forum. You know the last one, right, Brandon?
It's SVP, correct?
Yeah, SVP was way back in August of 17th. But then you look at the stretch Georgia's in right now. Since the back-to-back, when everybody was playing I'm a Bulldog by King James, and Georgia checked off Chad Lindbergh and then Kendall Milton in back-to-back days, Georgia has one commitment since July the 30th in the last 72 days of the recruiting cycle for the 2020 class.
Let me check in over here on YouTube and Facebook. We'll give you a couple comments, especially on this topic right here. Let me start with this. Danny Smith says, whatever happened to Georgia and Dorian Green-Warren?
Yeah, Darian Green-Warren is a guy that's kind of all over the place. He was a former Oklahoma commit as well. It seems like Nebraska seems like the California schools, USC, UCLA. Those are the schools that it's kind of happening with Darian Green-Warren. Remember, he took a visit to Georgia. He told me at the opening he wanted to get another visit back to Georgia. The same thing he told me at the end of May when he was getting through with a pylon 7-on-7 championships. But he wasn't there for Notre Dame. You don't see him on the guest list for any time soon. Maybe he shows up for Texas A&M. But right now, Brandon, I know how people like to think. Darian Green-Warren or Dante Manning, to me, the higher echelon player here is Dante Manning.
Joel Moody says Manning needs to come watch us beat Texas A&M, then he can commit to the G. Joel, that's a pretty good idea. Maybe an unofficial visit from Kansas City for that. Casey Cochran also asking this, talk about this cornerback. Just to reiterate, this doesn't seem to impact Georgia's recruitment of Keely Ringo one way or another.
No, this is a guy that, Keely Ringo is going to stay a mainstay recruit, an anchor recruit for the 2020 class as long as his decision goes forward. It's not affecting Kilo. It's not back up policies here for Keely Ringo. It's just trying to get the very best players in the class the staff possibly can.
Deep.
One other thing, we hope we've made mention. I hope you guys get the fact that he wants to take that December official visit. When we're talking the Bulldogs and we're talking any recruiting class, those December official visits are definitely and decidedly different. The other thing, when I speak to Dante Manning about his kind of interest in the Bulldogs, he says he loves the way he plays, that Georgia plays. He loves the way that Georgia gets guys on the field and sends guys on the league. He noticed that's Thorpe Award. But he also used the term, and this is a Brandon Adams, gravy on any type of recruiting story. When you can have a recruit mention the word family.
There you go.
Call the word dog family.
I like that.
You hear that? That is the gravy for Brandon Adams on any recruiting story.
Let me see if I can even name who all 10 of these schools are. Kansas State, Iowa State, I see Missouri there. I believe that's Arizona State. Classic Oregon logo, you kind of like that. And then obviously the more well-known Notre Dame, A&M, LSU, and Georgia. But I got these other top ones right? It's Kansas State, Iowa State. And
yeah, let's flash back. So you go Notre Dame, Kansas State, Iowa State,
Arizona
Oklahoma.
State.
You miss Mizzou.
I'm just talking about the ones I couldn't recognize.
Arizona State.
Difficult to recognize.
Yeah, you got all those correct. And,
yeah. I like the Donald Duck Oregon logo. Good for Dante Manning shouting out the old school.
And there's a top 10 here, guys. But remember, when you see only 5 schools that are on the books for the official visit, and to me, let's look at them: Oregon, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Georgia, LSU. Those are kind of the biggest.
Maybe he and Noah Sewell can take their official visit to Oregon together, and they can talk about living together at Georgia next year. Maybe that'll work out. D. Red says, "Come on, dogs, you got to flip Elias Ricks if you're Kirby Smart." And I will say that going back to the last article that you wrote with 5-star running back Kendall Milton, and Milton and Ricks are really good friends. I mean, to me, I took from Milton's interview with you that not even he's really thinking that's all that strong of a possibility that Georgia flips Ricks anymore, right? I mean, am I putting words in Milton's mouth by saying that?
I think here's what everybody needs to think about the Elias Ricks situation. If there's a team that's going to knock down the door and create the flip for Elias Ricks, I think right now that's Ohio State.
Okay.
And it's not Georgia.
Is that a Legend Cavazos thing?
It's probably a Legend Cavazos because
Okay.
Legend's a great recruiter, and Legend is down there at IMG Academy with Elias Ricks. And Ohio State is known as DBU, folks. We're going to be fair and balanced here. I know people hate to see it, but hate to hear it sometimes.
Are they DBU?
They're putting dudes in the league right
I'm not even talking about a Georgia thing here. I'm talking about between LSU. I mean, is Ohio State really more of DBU than LSU is?
I think they're touting a number right now, and I've seen some NFL.com stories about it, but over the last 5 or 6 years, Ohio State has definitely put more first-round DBs into the league,
Sure.
but also a total of more DBs total to the league, and they're even outpacing schools like, outpacing maybe the school everybody thinks about that one in terms of DBs to the league, and that would be the LSU Tigers.
Good enough on that. By the way, Sean Shannon over here in our YouTube, Facebook comment section says about, I mentioned Noah Sewell, that Sewell's going to be drinking sweet tea in Georgia a year from now, and I'm sure you probably saw the Kendall Milton thing on that.
Sweet tea, yeah. Maybe he hasn't. Brandon, let's just give young Kendall Milton the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just hasn't had true Southern sweet tea yet. Maybe he's got some concoction where sometimes you get a Lipton item where
I'm definitely willing to do that.
Got the lemon in there, and you can't go heavy on the lemon with anybody's sweet tea. At least not the way my grandma made it.
Definitely fair on that. All right, we got a lot more to come here as part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, including a look at our top targets list here coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, I was outside a little earlier. Normally I spend pretty much my entire day kind of captured in here inside of our Dog Nation World Headquarters Studios, this box as I like to call it. I was outside a little bit earlier, and you know what? A little fall in the air. Jeff's even got long sleeves on today. It's that kind of fall thing. When you think about fall stuff, you think about going to Kroger and getting stocked up on all the pumpkin-flavored stuff, whether it be pumpkin spice coffee, pumpkin pies, pumpkin-scented candles. Kroger can get you in the fall season, so get on over there, get savings on Halloween costumes, everything else. Enjoy Kroger for the fall. The one closest to you is all stocked up and ready to go just for you.
Brandon, what's your favorite item that you can buy at Kroger that's pumpkin related? What is your favorite pumpkin related?
I like pumpkin scented hand soaps. I like a little, wash your hands, little pumpkin scent to that. I don't mind that. Plus, my kids like any kind of all the jack-o'-lantern stuff and all that kind of stuff.
I think my buddy Connor Riley and then my man Mike behind the glass too. They're going to check that man card about pumpkin scented.
Who doesn't know? Come on now. I'm not talking about like lotions and stuff. I'm talking about you wash your hands to get the little fall on you. Well, that never hurt you. That never hurt anybody.
So, I know sometimes I got...
See, Ro Hawkins with me. He says he loves the fall season. He's even got some, falling leaf emojis on there.
Okay, granted, I know some people would have a debate with me about, me not having meat on my pizza, veggie pizza, and you wanting as much charred animal flesh as you can get on your pizzas.
Sure.
But for me...
I'm not eating pumpkin on a pizza.
I'm not eating pumpkin on a pizza.
Line.
But I'm a pumpkin pie guy, man. I love me some pumpkin pie. I know it's not healthy, but somebody sticks a pumpkin pie near me and I'm walking by that, I'm going to find a way to get a sliver or something like that on my plate, and then I'll have to do some cardio afterwards.
The thing I want a sliver of is our top targets list. Let's check in on that right now. Here's part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. We mentioned Keely Ringo before. He has been nestled atop the top targets now for a number of weeks, and I'm guessing as we check in on these today, we're going to see Ringo right back up there at the top again. One of these guys you kind of mentioned before, the waiting game for Georgia in terms of getting its next commit, and guys like Ringo, assuming that his relationship with Georgia stays as strong as it is, are part of the reason why that waiting game is being played. These are guys who've made their move towards Georgia. They've liked what they've seen, but now they're content to let their recruiting process ride through their senior season of high school in towards the end of the calendar year and kind of follow a more traditional recruiting calendar. I guess Ringo's as big a reason for the waiting game for a commit as anyone is right now.
Yeah, Ringo's one of those guys that's still holding on to his official visits for a lot of schools. I think the Oregon official visit's still out there, the Texas official's still out there, the Georgia official's still out there. And I'm just going to be frank with you folks. There are a lot of guys that are going to show up on our top targets list that have been here for eons, it feels like, and they have a clear path or a clear finish line for the resolution of their college decision, and that's an All-American game. I think there's at least 4 names on this on our top targets list that they're going to make their decision known. No, the number's now 5 that are going to make their decision known at some form of an All-American game.
By the way, GB2, controversial statement on YouTube. You mentioned pumpkin pie. GB says that pumpkin pie is just a sweet potato pie knockoff. Pretty bold statement by GB2 there. How about name number 2 on our top targets list for the class of 2020? Once again, Noah Sewell from out of Orem, Utah. You said some very interesting things about Sewell last week that definitely perked up my attention as Georgia has seemingly really put themselves in a good spot for Sewell.
Yeah, Brandon, let me see if I can put this one in your wheelhouse and let me know what you think over here. Teeing it up here, folks, you need to know that Noah Sewell is taking his official visit this weekend to Texas A&M for the Alabama game. That's his second official visit. Does this make you want to hope that the Tide really puts a number down on the Aggies, or do you have any sort of feeling about this game, knowing that Noah Sewell will be taking his official visit there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not going to, Noah Sewell taking a visit to Texas A&M is not enough to get me to root for Alabama here. It's probably not going to matter much anyway. Texas A&M, for as cool as their home field advantage is, they don't defend that turf very well. They lose at home all the time. I mean, they lost to Auburn a couple of weeks ago. So my guess is that Sewell will get a good trip to College Station. They will roll out the red carpet for him, but they'll do like they ever do in every other big home game they play. They will absolutely choke like the dogs that they are.
Do they have any?
And not DAWGS either.
Do they have any LED ribbon lighting in Kyle Field yet?
Boy, that's a good question. I'm not quite so sure. I don't know if you've heard, but Alabama's got some. They think they had theirs before everybody else did. Alabama's got its LED lights. I was watching the Tampa Bay Rays last night. They were flashing the lights all over the place. So by the time Alabama gets a chance to show its off, it's going to be like the least cool thing in the world.
I think Bama's got some blue or some azure into their LED lighting as well. It's not just the traditional crimson.
I don't speak Spanish, so I don't know what you're talking about. By the way, Elite GB also said that he likes apple crumb cake. So as opposed to the pumpkin pie. So pretty interesting answers coming in there.
Pecan pie is definitely the number 1 with a bullet in that category, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He also says he's just here so he doesn't get fined, which is a funny thing to say as well. All right, name number 3, our top targets list for the class of 2020. Darnell Washington, fresh off a visit to Florida. We talked about this on Tuesday on Dog Nation Daily. Give you a chance to, I guess, re-up your thoughts on Washington and where things stand, both in terms of him maybe peering in on Georgia using its tight ends, taking some visits, including to the enemy last week.
To the enemy last week?
Yeah.
Are the cool Jordan gear wearing dancers? Did you see that post-game dance from Dan Mullen in the mosh pit that was the Gator locker room?
Forever trying to be something he's not.
What was better for Gator?
By the way, these opinions don't necessarily reflect the opinions of Dog Nation. These are my own opinions.
What was bigger for Gator pride, Brandon? The Emmitt Smith viral speech or Dan Mullen getting down with his players?
I mean, can I be totally honest here for a moment? I mean,
Never stopped you before.
How is the Emmitt Smith speech going to mean all that much when he's sending his kid to every school but Florida?
Yeah, he wasn't there with an official visit.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
This kid will get the train back on the tracks here with Darnell Washington. It was a last-minute, late 11th hour official visit. He went out there to check out Florida. It was a great atmosphere. It's the second college football game he's ever seen. But remember that top 3 and then that top 5? The Gators weren't in either of those lists.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like Tennessee's fallen out and he had to slip somebody in, and I think that was the Florida Gators.
Yeah, ultimately, what Darnell Washington is going to do to Florida is the same thing Gators fans do to their gene. They will be cut off.
It'll be shredded.
Yeah, to make the jorts. In this case, Washington will eventually cut off Florida and move on to something else. Gene King feeling pretty confident, though. He says every name that's been mentioned thus far is a silent commitment to UGA, and it's certainly not. You don't have to look very far to find a lot of UGA fans who would agree on that. Too optimistic of an appraisal? I guess we'll find out, but that's what Gene King thinks. And Gene's never wrong, by the way.
Gene is never wrong.
Name number 4, I don't know. I'm just saying that. Name number 4 top targets. How about Jordan Birch from out of Columbia, South Carolina? I don't know that anyone could call him a silent commit to anywhere at this point in time.
He's committed to being silent.
Yeah, that's actually really well said. He is committed to being silent here at the moment, and I guess we know Kirby took the visit there a couple of weeks ago to see him there in Columbia. Just anything you can tell us about Birch one way or another.
Yeah, I think that definitely matters when you're talking about the head coach could spend anywhere, could go anywhere with his time, and he chose to be in Columbia, South Carolina, that bastion of culture in the great Palmetto State. He was there. He was there watching it with his good buddy Will Muschamp. We're going to have a lot of fun with Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart in our six-pack later on down the road.
Look forward to that.
Got a little tease going on, but I think the thing that stands out for me is he's playing everywhere, Brandon. I mean, Birch is playing some receivers, some wildcat quarterback. He's got catching double and triple teams right now. I think he's got 8 sacks, Brandon, right now on the year for the Hammond School. And folks, that's in the South Carolina Independent Schools Association. I am not going to give you any sort of positive thoughts about how strong that playing classification is.
Let me ask you a quick question, and I don't mean straight line speed alone, because I'm sure that Sewell is probably the faster of the two guys. Who's the better big man athlete? Is it Sewell or is it Birch?
Sewell.
Not a very long answer for Jeff to consider that. Pretty interesting stuff. How about our next name between our top targets here? We get to Theo Johnson, the tight end out of the nation known as Canada, among 2 tight ends in the top 5 for Georgia right now. And Johnson, I guess, got a little bit of a busy weekend coming up. Is that fair?
Yeah, he does. He's going to be in Iowa for one of his last looks at Iowa. This is going to be a one-day trip on Saturday.
They're doing an official visit to Iowa. And I mean this in all sincerity.
It's not an official, I believe. He's already taken his official. Oh. This is a unofficial hang. And it was at Penn State recently as well. I believe that was last weekend.
Has anybody ever voluntarily chosen to hang in Iowa? Like, well, I mean, how much entertainment are you getting there? What are you, just eating 15 different flavors of corn? I mean, I'm actually being serious about this. Like, what do? You go to Iowa City for a game.
Well, you look at the tradition of tight ends that Iowa's putting
they've used tight ends now. There's no doubt about that.
And they're popping them in the league, sir. They got George Kittle. They got T.J. Hawkinson. They got another guy that was a #1 draft pick last year.
Is Johnson, and this is on the record, on the level. Is he potentially swayed by the tight end usage of Iowa?
You got to.
I'm sure it's not the nightlife that's going to.
Not just swayed by tight end usage, Brandon. What it is it's tight end production and tight end development, getting those guys to the league. And folks, Iowa's not signing any 4-stars or 5-stars at the tight end position. Hawkinson, Kittles, a lot of these guys, they were either former wide receivers or 3-star tight ends that have grown into being NFL first-rounders for Iowa. We just spoke earlier about DBU, which I feel you got to give that nod to Ohio State right now, at least till Georgia starts pumping in a few more DBs out there. The tight end U crown right now is currently in Iowa. And,
wait, so you got Iowa's tight end you got LSU, you got any more platitudes you want to dish out here today?
We're crowning people today, aren't we, Brandon? We're crowning people.
I guess so.
One thing, I know I was a little too short and to the point. I know Brandon hates it when we're to the point.
No, I like it. You say what you want.
Jordan Birch, different type of players. Jordan Birch to me seems like that athletic type of guy that you see a lot. I think Trayvon Walker is maybe an example. Trayvon Walker is a bigger guy than Jordan Birch in terms of that skill set, maybe by about 20 or 30 pounds. But Jordan Birch is a guy to me that wherever he goes, he doesn't scream, play right away. Not to me, because I need to see more from playing in that level of high school football that he did. He does right now at the Hammond School. No knock to that. They're just much higher levels of football in the Southeast.
Yeah.
Didn't see him at camps. Didn't see him at an opening. So there's a lot of undiscovered country there about what his first-year upside is in college football. Of course, the talent's all there, the way he moves across positions. I think I'm looking at his stats right now. He has 38 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks so far. I know some of our DogNation.com readers and viewers and some of those folks that get down on the forum saw Jordan Birch up close last week when he was playing in Augusta. I think he faced Augusta Christian last week. They said some of the reports that I heard back from people who know their football in the city of Augusta is they said very athletic, can do a lot of things, big body. If they had to dig in for something, they said he wasn't always showing that great motor at all times. Probably because he's playing offense and defense and catching a lot of doubles and triples on offense. But that was the report I heard on Jordan Birch playing a football game in Georgia soil last weekend.
Sean Shannon says, I would choose Sewell over Birch if I had to choose. Joel Moody also asks a great question. What are the odds that a Rick Gilbert is still on this top 10 list? Joel, I think that's a very good question. Does he come in again at number 10 this week? Let's find out. I'm actually starting to wonder on that, Joel. That's a very, very astute question to ask. Next name, top targets of the class of 2020 as we roll on here is Ikevius Walker from Sly County, Georgia, showing up at number 6. Kind of been around this spot now for a while, and I guess what's the latest on the in-state defensive tackle, especially now that Jacoby Cowan, another defensive lineman who we've discussed before, off the board committing to Ohio State. Where does that leave Georgia for this position, and how does Walker factor into that?
Yeah, Walker's got to be, front and center in the remaining defensive line targets for Georgia. I believe he's had a busy back-to-back couple of weekends. I think he was in Florida last weekend for an official visit to check out the Gators. Weekend prior to that, he was having his homecoming there in Sly County. 6'5.5", 6'4.5", 6'5", 270 pounds. I think he could play the 3 or 5 technique for the Bulldogs. Grown into that spot a little bit because he was maybe a year ago seen as a guy that would be an outside backer or a true defensive end, an edge type defensive end. Kind of seems to me like, and everyone wants to hear about player comps and player parallels. I think the closest one for Ikevius on the Georgia roster right now might be Malik Herring. But
that's interesting.
But Malik Herring had, to me, a more.
It's like he just do a backflip too?
I don't think he can do a backflip or be swayed by Santas on Christmas commitment videos. But when I think about that comparison with Malik and Ikevius, you see that, maybe middle Georgia, South Georgia type kids from rural communities, or at least not metro communities. I think Malik had a little bit more battle testing in terms, you saw him at every elite camp during the 2017 recruiting cycle. And I think right now Malik had a much more pronounced array of pass rush moves than Ikevius Walker does at this time.
I'm sure you've told us this. By the way, there's little Christmas commitments for you. I always like seeing that. I'm sure you've told us this. Look at Malik Herring. Come on, get up, big fella. You'd love to see that.
I don't think Ikevius Walker can do that.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough thing to pull there. I'm sure you've told us this 15,000 times. I can never remember. What's Ikevius Walker's timeline right now?
Timeline for him is very interesting. It's one of those remaining whenever type officials, because he says when he feels it, he could make the move. I do know that his official visit for Georgia, the staff has wished for him to take that one in the month of December.
Yeah, that's when you want. I'm telling you, discriminating tastes understand that is the month to take official visits. They're going to roll out the red carpet. I know it seems like it's fun to do it for a game. I've said this now 3 weeks in a row. I know it seems fun to do it for a game. Come in December, they're going to really, really show what it's all about.
See, Brandon, if he was the 5-star quarterback, what he would do and drive everyone crazy is he would take his official visits back to back. Kind of like how Nakobe Dean tried to fit his in last year. You would take one in the first week of December, one in the second week of December, catch a midweek official visit. You would take all those late December officials. Maybe not a quarterback because that's very hard.
Yeah, maybe a little bit different there on that. How about the next name on our top targets for the class of 2020? We're rolling on here. It's Dante Manning. That's the next name on the list. He comes in at number 7. We talked about him before. And he debuted in our top 10 last week, so serious enough that he does show up as a finalist.
Yeah, he's there potentially because I see a lot of things. Great ability, an elite national recruit. He professes already a good connection with the Georgia staff, and he plans to take an official visit to Georgia, and he knows when he would like to take his official visit. I think those are things that push him up to the 7. ahead of those other guys that are about to follow.
How about the next name on the list after Manning, who we discussed a little bit earlier, as we keep it rolling? Top targets of the class of 2020, still on the list. A Florida commit, Gervon Dexter here, and I don't know. I mean, you tell me what to think about this. Is this really rising and falling with the fortunes of how Florida plays? Is it more likely that Georgia gets him once Florida loses to LSU on Saturday? Was it less likely based on the fact that they won the rock fight against Auburn last week? I mean, how does all that go?
Rock fight or pillow fight?
A little bit of a rock fight, ugly, kind of.
Was that a Terrell Owens special with TOs everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say it's a pillow fight. I thought both the teams showed some physicalities. I mean, this wasn't. You want to see a pillow fight? You go watch some of these Oklahoma games. So I'm not going to say it's a pillow fight. There was some physicality there, but not exactly the prettiest thing.
So let's speculate, Brandon. I know you've been privy to do that a couple of times on this program. I think Florida needs to get to 3 or 4 losses for the oyster to crack open for Georgia to have some real potential to flip Gervon Dexter.
Yeah, Will, by the way, on our YouTube comment section says he thinks that Gervon is a Florida lock, most likely. And that those are certainly Dexter's own words. Sometimes his actions don't exactly match up with those words, but Dexter has certainly suggested that.
Yeah, Georgia's the team that's really trying and been trying for the longest time with Dexter. There was some things said at the opening that
Danny Smith, though, happy to see him still on the list.
Yeah, and I mean, let's look at the likely losses for Florida, Brandon. You got to count LSU as one of those. You count Georgia as one of those. Who else is on the list in your mind where Florida gets to 4 losses this year now?
Be careful with South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Be careful with the Gamecocks.
You don't think Mizzou is an issue? You don't think a school like that is an issue yet?
I mean, listen.
Tennessee.
I think that Florida's going to have to buckle its chin strap and tape up just to beat Missouri. I'm just saying. I mean, Missouri is a definite game where you got to be very, very careful. I'm saying don't just gloss over South Carolina. Because remember, for all the stuff that Florida's doing for winning games, a lot of the analytics community, a lot of the gambling community has not necessarily bought into the Gators. So I hear from Florida fans who say, BA, when are you going to admit you didn't give them enough credit? Florida's issue right now is not me not giving them credit. Florida's issue right now is the fact that there are a lot of people who crunch numbers for a living who look at the Gators and they say,
You've always looked at the Gators and said that, right?
I've said a few other things over the years.
With Florida, I don't see how they get to 4 losses anymore. That's a pretty good team, especially that, the top 15 players on their defense right now. I think they have some true SEC quality depth there. Of course, they've already played Tennessee, as we kind of mentioned earlier. So you got Mizzou, you got Georgia, you got South Carolina that you labeled as potential trapdoors for them or pitfalls.
Just be careful. I'm just trying to help.
Got to say this, though. If the Gators come out of there, and folks, let's make no bones about it, similar situation to what Georgia waded into last year with going to Baton Rouge, playing in Death Valley, playing a strong and up-and-coming LSU Tigers team as well. But also, you got to give credit. They catch their out of their crossover division games, Auburn and LSU, back-to-back weeks. Some pretty good stuff right there.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
That's a strong order right there.
Next name on our top targets list, Zachary Evans, the 5-star running back. Any chance he ends up going to the LSU game this weekend?
LSU, Florida. That's the school that you hear kind of creeping, kind of trying to get in there, keep gaining momentum. But, Zachary Evans has a lot of opinions about his eventual choice and where he's going to wind up, and it ranges and it varies. You see Ty Davis and you see John Emery. I don't think either one of those guys has 100 yards rushing so far.
Yeah, they have not really used their freshman running back as much as I thought they would.
And I just wonder, I can never see Georgia's people being that polarizing. If Georgia went full, Oklahoma with their offense and they were throwing for 400 yards a game, best believe that'd be a problem if the 5-star running backs that come in are not getting their carries and touches.
It is interesting to me, just given everything you said about this, that given the chance to rank the top 10 remaining targets for Georgia, knowing Georgia needs another running back, you put Evans in over the other ones that you could have mentioned. That's at least something here. Because, there's been a lot of Georgia fans who I think thought their moment in the sun with Evans is kind of passed.
Yeah, I can see that, but this has been a gradual decline for Evans. I think he's been hitting that beep on this top target list, that backup alarms for quite some time, and I just think that's going to be a tough thing for Georgia with Evans the rest of the way, and that's why he's represented at number 9.
All right, next name, top target, final name, and it is not. Good call by Joel Moody. We have now officially tagged the toe. 5-star tight end Rick Gilbert is no longer on the top 10 targets list. Arian Smith jumps back into the top targets list. Recently gotten a Clemson offer. There's been some chatter about Smith in Alabama, just on the basis of Alabama gets involved with everybody eventually. So what about Smith kind of moving up here? Is this more of an example of the trap door opening underneath Gilbert's feet, or is this Arian Smith a reason to move him up?
I think there's just right now I just credibly see Georgia signing Arian Smith more than I do Eric Gilbert at this time, and that's something. Is he going to take his official visit to Georgia for the Kentucky game? Is Gilbert going to show up next week for Athens and an official? Is that going to give Georgia a chance to move the dial a little bit? Something to watch, but I just remember a lot of things that Gilbert's been saying. Wants to see usage rate at the tight end position. Looking at Clemson, looking at Alabama, those two teams seem like Titans in his recruiting right now. You see Georgia with Theo Johnson and Darnell Washington at tight end. It's a little bit of a combination of it seems like Gilbert's trending in a certain way, and it seems like Arian Smith is a guy that probably needs to be in that 10 spot, because here's what that list should be. It's a list of mutual interest between Georgia and the recruit. It's the legitimacy of who we feel that could end up in the Georgia class. So it's a mixture of priority. It's a mixture of plausibility, which means the ability to land a signee in the 2020 class, and it's also has a lot to do with need and depth and how much they need to bring in a guy at certain positions.
Before I show you the guys that just missed out, let me mention a couple comments here. We talked about Evans before. VTW says Zachary Evans needs to pay attention to the LSU new look offense. He says they don't run the ball anymore, echoing what Jeff said a moment ago. Also, David Jackson says Evans seems like a distant memory. It feels like as fast as some of these news cycles can move, that Evans, the Georgia talk, as intense as it was a few weeks ago, that does start to feel like an awful long time ago now. How about the guys that just missed out on being here? Boy, look how linear this is today. Normally it's kind of like spread out all over the screen. Today it's just right down the middle, very sharp, very nice. Still got Tank Bigsby as the Auburn commit on here. Still got Don Chaney Jr. as the Miami commit on here. Jaquarius Conley, I should say, who's recently gotten a UGA offer. He shows up on here. Rick Gilbert does make the list. Shaw Johnson, the teammate of Cedric Von Prawn, he's on the list. Jaden DeLaura still on here, despite the fact that DeLaura recently committed to Washington State. That's kind of interesting. The other running back that shows up here is Marshawn Lloyd. I'm sure maybe he'll be watching this game closely on Saturday as his current school takes on Georgia, the school that has been rumored to be in the mix for him from time to time. And there is Rick's on here as well. Jeff, what do you want to say about this?
Yeah, so you got a few things. Obviously, I hope the perspective comes across here with what Georgia's class looks like. There's a lot of names at the top. They've kind of been in molasses stuck up there. They have kind of definite decision dates, and save for a name or two here or there, there's not a lot of jockeying. And what it creates is it creates a lot of who's going to be in the class with the final 2 or 3 names. And if it's another running back, I think, Brandon, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those right there. It'd be very interesting if Georgia can get a sneak away visit from Marshawn Lloyd down this weekend from Georgia would sure like to welcome him there.
Yeah.
Got to make that commute from D.C. though. Elias Ricks, Jaquarius Conley, those are nods to what could be the potential third defensive back in the class should Georgia have and continue to land the momentum late with Keely Ringo.
If one of those running backs, Bigsby, Chaney, let's keep it to Bigsby, Chaney, and Lloyd for a moment because those are the names we talked the most about. If Bigsby, Chaney, or Lloyd wanted to commit to Georgia right now, would Georgia accept that commitment?
That's a good question. I don't even know if the Georgia coaches might have to shoot that one out a little bit. Yeah. I would think Chaney would be the move right there. Okay. I think that would be the one that – there would be some interesting things, though, because Miami's still not playing really great football in the first year of the Manny Diaz area right there. And you gotta remember one more name. The young man from Dalton, Jahmyr Gibbs. You continue to hear things with Mr. Gibbs, and I think he has 24 touchdowns, had 24 touchdowns through 5 games. Of course, that's not the greatest competition in the Georgia High School Association. Is he the biggest back for Georgia? You look at all those names, and man, if Georgia takes a running back, I don't know if Ashad Clayton Johnson might be the guy that is the most likely running back left in the Georgia's class. And Brandon, quite frankly, I don't know if there's really high prospects for many of those guys right now.
Joel Torres in our Facebook comment section wants to ask a question. I want to make sure we clear this up for the people. And we have new people that tune in sometimes, maybe don't watch every single week. So we just ran through the top 10 targets, and the list that you just saw were the guys that just missed out on making the top 10.
Honorable mentions.
Yeah, some of the names you mentioned, like a Sewell or a Ringo, guys like that, they show up right near the very beginning of the top 10. Those are the top targets who just miss out on being in there, guys that just missed out on that for right now. So let's just make sure we are clear about that. That's the honorable mentions for being those top targets, top 10. It is Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, and it's great to have all of you with us here today. And obviously, I kind of celebrated before the idea that the fall season seems to be finally moving in. Actually, pretty brisk weather outside right now, which I really enjoy. The crisp feel of the breeze hitting you on the skin. But it also has a downside to it. It also ushers in cold and flu season. And when it comes to flu season, you make sure you get that vaccination. And Kroger's got you covered when it comes to that. You can get your vaccination at Kroger. There's no appointment needed. That means it's convenient for you. And it's good on your wallet or pocketbook as well, because you can have it with a copay as low as $0. So make sure you check that out. Go to this website, Kroger.com/flu, to learn more about that. Kroger.com/flu for more details. We'll do our six-pack coming up in just a moment. Jeff will try to stump us with some trivia questions. He's already given us a little bit of a hint. Maybe you've had the Google machine out to kind of do a little research on this. Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart, their relationship, maybe prior to their current job. That'll be a fun. That'll be a fun six-pack coming up here in just a moment. Before that, though, speaking of fun, let's have some fun with doing what we do from time to time, checking in on the online chatter, UGA recruits having successful senior seasons of high school, other guys giving us a hint of what their eventual college choice might be. Let me start with the guy known as the Brontosaurus. He is a UGA commit, an impressive offensive lineman out of the state of Florida, and what a mauler he has turned out to be here during his senior season.
Yeah, first of all, Brandon calls this the death punch. And it looks like that would fit underneath some steel.
It looks like Hands of Stone Ronnie Garvin right there. Watch this. I mean, that is boom. That is rough.
That's like Bruce Lee martial arts movie, The Death Touch, Dim Mak. I remember those where Bruce could just pop a guy and then all of a sudden that guy would fall over.
Bron's a physical player. Bron is a very physical player.
You don't have to coach the physicality out of him either. It comes really naturally. And Brandon, he's becoming one of the most wildly entertaining players in this class, especially for the offensive lineman category. We know about the tennis. We know about the National Merit Scholar, the great grades, the potential valedictorian, salutatorian in his class, the swing dancing. We mentioned the tennis. Brothers played at Georgia Tech, but I think we've got a little treat right now. You know, one of the things I want to kind of go a little bit deeper with our online chatter is Bron gives us a lot to work with. I want to call upon this one tweet in particular where his father, this is a good one too. This is a Hollywood serial type with the
Who made this? That's amazing. That's pretty impressive.
You know, Brandon likes it when we can show some highlights during the season.
That.
And what this feature is really going to be like is about a mid-season film review for a lot of Georgia's top targets. And
I do enjoy that.
Just look at that. There goes Brontosaurus. Man, some of these guys look like demolition derbies, man, where he is just waylaying guys and nobody wants to mess with that dude. You know where he is on the screen. Look at him take that guy down.
Yeah, that's right.
You talk about having
I love the production element here, though.
You talk about the head on a swivel right there. That's what you're going to need with the Brontosaurus around. So here's the thing, Brandon. We've seen the death punch. We've seen the Brontosaurus. It looks like it's a Pulp Fiction type novel or whatever. Joshua Braun was at the Florida-Auburn game last week.
Don't like that as much.
He was there with his boys. He wasn't sitting in the recruit section. He was just sitting there with teammates watching a football game.
So Florida was able to get some recruits to come to this game.
Well, but they weren't as recruits. They were just watching the game. Oh, you clever guy, you. We need a rim shot sometimes for Brandon. But it prompted some online chatter. Florida got a chance. Was he their top target? What's happening? The fury of Florida football and those homecoming uniforms are coming back. It prompted this tweet from the Braun family. Psst, I'm so committed to UGA that even this font is Georgia.
So I don't get typeset humor, so I wasn't exactly sure. So that's a Georgia font right there?
Yeah, there's a Helvetica, Times New Roman, Palatino.
No, I know what fonts are. I'm just not an expert in them.
That is the Georgia font.
That's the Georgia font there for that. So you like to see that. And the truth is, I joked about this. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, recruits can take a visit every single Saturday they want to. Like, I'm not one of these guys who says I don't, want Georgia commits visiting other places. I'm the most hands-off person in the world when it comes to that kind of stuff. I think that Georgia sells itself no matter where the recruits are. Braun wants to go to the Auburn-Florida game. It's a pretty good game. I mean, I've got no beef with that whatsoever.
And here, let me make this clear. There are recruits maybe that some years and some cycles that this fan base can worry about. Not Joshua Braun and this family. This is a family that says what they mean and they mean what they say. They told me, when he was getting ready to commit, when they committed, after they committed. The only way he's not going to be a Georgia Bulldog is pretty simple. Sam Pittman's coaching somewhere else and Kirby Smart's coaching somewhere else. Those two seismic events would have to happen for the Georgia football program, for you good people to start worrying about the Brontosaurus parading in any other swamps in the SEC besides being inside Sanford Stadium for some of those light-up Georgia nights in the fall.
I do like the Godzilla-type reference to the Brontosaurus there. That's a pretty fun thing. What else you got for
You
us?
just needed to have a pair of a Florida helmet there.
Wouldn't mind that. Wouldn't mind that. Yeah, wouldn't mind that at all. Pretty good stuff as our online chatter rolls on here.
So we're going to roll through a lot of them. We're going to call these kind of highlights for top targets and a lot of commitments for what they've been doing so far. Let's call it midterms here on Hedges.
Don't mind that at all.
Let's start out with, we got a couple Jalen Carter. Now,
I want you to see him from Carter.
Look at Carter. He fields his kick, Brandon, and then watch him. And let me invoke some Berman here. Rumbling, stumbling. Everyone else is stumbling.
Yeah, you don't want a part of that tackle. No, listen, to a young man who may be thinking about, do I want to make that tackle or not? You got your whole life to think about. Don't get in front of Jalen Carter right there.
Who kicked it to him? I mean, that was the up man. People making some business decisions right there.
I don't have any problem with that whatsoever.
Hails from the same high school which produced Warren Sapp.
Yeah.
That is Georgia's prize, gym, franchise, showcase defensive line commitment right now. I think he's still the number 7 defensive tackle commitment for the country.
Fun. Let's keep this rolling. That's great.
Number 2, let's go to Warren Brinson. And got a 2-pack from Warren Brinson. This is him against St. Joe's Prep. That's the program which produced DeAndre Swift to the SEC. Do you like that little shimmy shake, that little dance at the end right there for his sack dance right there?
Let's say yes.
Let's watch him again. Brandon does that all the time when the Braves get home runs tonight in the Division Series capper.
Hashtag relentless.
He's all over the place. So you got 2 good tweets there from Brinson. Brinson, folks, he's had a very stalwart, a very robust senior year there.
He's really come on strong as a prospect, right? Really improved, he seems to be in great shape right there. Brinson's presence this 2020 class is a welcome addition for me.
Folks, you want to know a cheat sheet about recruiting and first-year impacts at Georgia? When they come out of 13th grade, big boy grade IMG Academy, which is basically, it's a facsimile of the first-year college experience in every way. Those boys practice in the morning. They have meetings. They have psychology. They have weight training. They have therapy. They have study hall. It's already the college-level experience. And for Brinson to flourish for not 1 but 2 years now in that IMG program says a lot about what he can do at Georgia.
Yeah, you love to see it. Really good stuff.
Got another one right here. This is Kendall Milton. He may not like the sweet tea, Brandon, but he likes that EZ, which would be the end zone.
Which is honestly more important to me when it's all said and done.
Watch him right there. You remember how we talked about how he was going to make a business decision and settle down and wait until the brunt of his region schedule out there in California? He got back on the field last week, made a bunch of highlight plays right there, and look at that. Folks that's
really nice.
It's not a Tom Emanski tackling clinic if there was such a thing for trying to tackle Kendall Milton. There's another interesting tweet with Kendall Milton where somebody tweeted out a list of foods that they will avoid. And Kendall Milton looked at that list and had things like asparagus, Brussels sprouts, liver, beef, pickles, avocados, pineapple. And Kendall Milton found 31 things on that list that he would not eat. Now, folks, if you thought going on a road trip with Brandon Adams and he was a picky eater, Kendall Milton with 31 things he will avoid. And it's funny, his dad actually called him out on Twitter. He said, "Man, Kendall, you're tripping." And he only found 10 things that he wouldn't want to eat on that list.
Have you ever eaten liver?
I have not. That would be one of my things on the list.
Yeah, I'm not touching liver. That seems rough.
I mean, I probably wouldn't try liver if Sam Pittman, Kirby Smart, and Vince Dooley were serving it.
All right, so good stuff here from Chad Lindbergh, looks like.
Now look at this. He's smart. He's a great shot putter. Every time I see him now on social media, he's wearing a Georgia T-shirt.
Yeah.
But this is a young lady, and they're talking about some homecoming, and she's an LSU fan. I don't know if she's an athlete on the way to LSU or whatsoever, but look at him coming up with some clever moves right there. Chad Lindbergh says, "Want to go to Hoco with a dog." And he's got a Georgia logo.
So are kids calling homecoming Hoco now?
I think so.
Is that what we're doing?
We each want to
I don't know about that.
We got graphics.
Are you in that big of a hurry that you can't say homecoming?
Well, you want to fit it on the board, Brandon. He wants to look at that tweet again.
So when I first saw it, I thought it was like Jake Fromm, Houston County High School. I feel like Hoco's already taken.
There's some king cake there. If you look really closely there, the young lady's holding some king cake.
Yeah. Don't mind that.
Around Mardi Gras. She might be a New Orleans native or resident.
I feel like the kids got to go ahead and calling it homecoming again. There's nothing sacred.
Well, we know about pumpkin-scented hand lotion. That's what's sacred
Not
here around
lotion,
these parts.
hand soaps.
Okay.
Hand soaps.
What's the difference between and we had
good to see Tate Ratledge standing up for what's right here.
Yeah, you got.
I mean, listen, you want a leader on and off the field. This is Tate Ratledge right here. I am very, very happy to see him. I'm not afraid to call in a teammate. I don't mind, a future teammate in this case. Don't mind that at all. Tate Ratledge, stand up for what's right.
You're crazy, man. You got you crazy, and you got that emoji hand palm over the face right there. Sweet tea is nasty, no cap. Again, we think that Kendall Milton just hasn't had the finer delicacies of the true Southern sweet tea. Maybe he'll enjoy some of that in Athens sometime around some barbecue. But you got Tate Ratledge keeping it real.
I like that. We're very glad to see that.
One more, and Brandon, I know you're a
big
big dancer, but this is one from the opening. I don't know if you good people got to see. This is Marcus Rosemy. Just played Carson Beck recently as well at St. Thomas Aquinas. Look at him make the score, wide open, but then look at a little salsa dancing.
So if I have to say that Rosemy's dance here is better than Brinson's, am I allowed to say that?
You would hope your receivers and skill guys dance better than your defensive tackles.
Yeah, so I don't mind that. It's a pretty good job there by Marcus Rosemy, a player, by the way, I'm pretty excited about having as part of this Georgia team coming up for the class of 2020. Really good stuff. I love the highlights.
Got a couple more, Brandon.
Oh, my gosh.
And this right here is, we call him the hot boy right there. That is Theo Johnson. Throw him around there. Hot boy's looking like ice. Look at him. Look at this right there, Brandon. He makes moves, and some of the folks on Twitter said, are you sure that's a tight end right there? Look at him cross over the field, get that defensive back turned around, high stepping over angles. Brandon, is he going to score?
No.
As he falls to the ground.
I've turned into Tom Jackson here.
We got two or three more we got right now.
I've been told we have 5 more.
Darnell Washington. Look at this one.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
You see him right there?
That one I've seen. That's pretty impressive. The big stiff arm there from Washington. You love to see that.
The recent Florida official visitor has another highlight for us on our reel. Let's go to that next one now.
Let's see that as well.
Watch the far side of the field, Brandon, and this is him housing one, 55 yards. Watch him go up and catch it. He basically Heisman poses another guy. Another guy tries to tackle him at his ankles. That's not really smart. He finds the sidelines, and he coasts up for a 55-yard score.
Good stuff there from Darnell Washington.
Looks like that was a basic route they used right there. And, we got one more, Corey Wren, at least one more. Look at this speed. The thing I want you to focus on right here, Brandon, is look at the speed he utilizes at outrunning these angles. I mean, by the time he puts that into overdrive, there's no one there, man.
Yeah, I mean,
running him out of the screen.
Certainly, considered a wide receiver by Georgia, but playing mostly running back for his high school team, for a team that doesn't throw the ball very much. He's been showing off that speed all season long.
And I think we have exhausted our highlight supply.
All right, good stuff there.
Well, not a highlight, but this is Justin Robinson, the Georgia commitment. Took an official visit last weekend, I believe, to Nebraska. Now he's only taken 2 so far. This was his official to Nebraska. He took one to Virginia early in the spring. He's got one more visit left, and that visit is to Georgia. That's a December official visit. He says he went to Nebraska, saw some corn, as Brandon likes to say. Still feels very solid to the University of Georgia.
Well, that's great to hear for Robinson, a very impressive young man, and kind of every sense of the word. It's before the Hedges presented by Kroger. I like this. Jeff had a whole highlight show planned. I just got to sit here and watch a lot of these guys play in football. Love to do that. I also love our top targets excuse me, we've already done that. Let me see if I can get on the right page here. I also love our 6-pack. Jeff trying to stump us with some trivia questions. And Jeff, you've already kind of given us a bit of a teaser about what it's about, so the floor is yours.
So first of all, anybody that goes 6 for 6 today, we're going to find them some pumpkin-scented hand lotion.
No, we're not.
Hand soap.
Jeff's going to find it for you.
What's the difference between hand soap and hand lotion?
Soap gets you clean when you're dirty. Lotion gets you smooth when you're rough.
Belongs on a billboard. There
I guess it does. That's a little freestyle for you.
Number 1 on our pick 6, man. I'm going to think about that one for a while. Will Muschamp. Which one of these is not true about Will Muschamp? A, he walked on at Georgia and became a starting safety. B, Muschamp was a speech communications major in Athens. C, he attended the same high school as current UGA commit Tate Ratledge.
Okay.
D, after his playing career, he was a graduate assistant at Georgia.
Okay.
E, Florida's 38-20 win in 2014 remains the only time that he has beaten UGAs. Faced him at South Carolina, faced him at Florida, and faced him as an Auburn defensive coordinator.
Yeah, so the E is true. The D seems like it could be true. The C, I probably should know this, but I don't. Feels very much like you because I don't know his status as a player, to say that he walked on was actually a scholarship. So for some reason, I'm gravitating towards this as a moment. I'm going to say that he was not a walk-on, that Will Muschamp was a scholarship. So I'm going to say the A is incorrect.
What does your Facebook crew say?
They're saying E. Gene King says D. Greg Baker's with me, doesn't think he was a walk-on. Philip Jordan Wells says A. Over here on YouTube for a second. By the way, Danny Blackman says he loves chicken livers, by the way, a topic we talked about earlier. So a little bit of a mixed answer.
Liver's different than chicken livers, am I correct?
I don't think so. I think it's the same thing. I could be wrong. A little bit of a mixed bag with the answers. You want to tell us what it is?
Yeah, let's look at that slate one more time. Your correct answer is after his playing career, he was a graduate assistant at UGA. He did not grad assist at UGA. He's, in fact, never been an assistant coach at UGA
Not
in
at
any
all.
capacity. He goes Valdosta
pretty
State, he goes Western Kentucky, he goes LSU.
Pretty
he goes
interesting.
Texas, a lot of places, but Coach Muschamp, William Larry Muschamp, was never a grad assistant at Georgia.
That's a pretty good question. I admit I did not know that, so that's a pretty good question.
Give him props, man. Walking on at Georgia and then becoming what he did at Georgia.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, good player. I'm actually old enough to remember him as a player, and he was a good one.
Darlington Tiger. It's where his father was actually the headmaster at Darlington at one time as well when he moved from Florida to Georgia to cap out his high school career. And that's currently where you got to love some sweet tea. Tate Ratledge resides.
Very nice. How about question number 2?
Number 2, Brandon. We've got on the board, true or false, Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp were both permanent captains at UGA and also named to academic All-SEC teams.
It feels like something that should be true. I think if Kirby's kind of a smart guy, I'm sure he's a pretty good student. Muschamp, I'm reckoning, was probably pretty smart there as well. You have to be kind of a smart guy to hang around as a walk-on before you get on the team. Permanent captains, that seems legit for both those guys. They're both pretty good players in the defensive secondary. Different kind of eras, at least Smart barely overlapping the end of the Muschamp era. So I'm going to say that's probably true.
Brandon, what does your YouTube folks say?
They are saying Justin Ross Huggins says false. Gene King says true. Kevin Lee says false. Boy, a lot of falses here. Michael Hoffman included saying false. A lot of falses coming in here. Elite GB says true for sure, although GB2 says false. So competing GBs in our YouTube comment section. So a little bit of a split decision here between trues and false. I'm going to say true on this. It's just a guess for me, but I'm going to say true.
Brandon, hopefully just like your Atlanta Braves in a few hours, Brandon, you're on the board. You are now 1 for 2. Ringing that bell for Brandon.
I'm already doing better than Freddie Freeman.
So one little thing, this probably won't appear in our six-pack selection, but I'm going to give you a little more, do a little bit more with our six-pack trivia this week. Who was probably, who can we arguably say was the better player at Georgia, Muschamp or Smart?
Probably Smart because of the interceptions.
Smart because of the interceptions, and he also started a lot more games. I think Will Muschamp never started more than 9 games in a season while he was at Georgia.
He was a pretty good player, though.
Pretty good player, a good starter when Georgia had a lot of defensive back options back in the days. But Kirby started basically every game of his junior. Kirby started basically every game of his junior and senior year at Georgia.
For some reason, I remember Muschamp coming up, and I may have this memory kind of clouded, coming up big in the 94 tie versus Auburn. I don't know why I remember this, but I kind of do.
Well, the 94 loss to Alabama, that was a tough game for him.
Big game, yeah.
I think I remember him getting beaten on a couple of plays right there when I was a undergrad, I believe. So that's something to think about. Main thing to know right now is we know about the benefits of pumpkin scented with our hand soap collections. And Brandon is also 1 for 2.
All right, that's right. Question number 3.
Number 3. Got another question for you. This is kind of going to go into, it's a staple every week, Brandon.
Right.
The blue chip ratio.
Mm-hmm.
What is the blue chip ratio of 4- and 5-star recruits since 2016? These are the guys that are going to be on the field on Saturday. Looked like with South Carolina, 76-27.
Yeah.
I've figured out that you guys know, you see blue chip ratios all the time, that every week it's 76.
Right.
So I'm going to leave it static
Smart.
at 76. So how many blue chips, 4 and 5s, does South Carolina
This
have?
close to putting it in chronological order, but almost.
27, 35, 42, and 18.
All right, so to me, it's either 27 or 35. It's not 42 and it's not 18. It's either 27 or 35 for South Carolina. That's a 4-year span of classes. Am I being too ambitious for saying? Probably so. Let me just take the lower number and say 27. I really want to say 35, but that puts you at bringing in, 8 4 stars a year. Seems like a lot for South Carolina. let me say it's 76-27. I want to say 35, but I'm going to say 76-27.
Elite GB, smart young man that he is, has B up there. What does everybody on YouTube say? You got a YouTube grasp of the situation?
Greg Baker goes B as well. Gary Strickland goes A. Malcolm Collins goes D. Ro Hawkins goes A. So I got a little bit of different smattering of answers.
Let's look at the board right now and give you guys a quick answer. The correct answer is 27. Brandon's right.
All right, there you go.
He's, and you kind of nailed the way I think a lot of people need to think of it. You got 4 cycles, and you got South Carolina only averaging about 7 4 or 5 stars every year.
Yeah.
Whew, that would be a bad year before the Hedges parts.
Yeah.
If Georgia was only signing 7 approximate 4 or 5 stars per year. Some years Georgia could get 7 5-stars in a year, including this one.
If you're not signing about 12 4-stars a year, you're not a playoff contender at all.
Oh, yeah.
At all. I mean, and you're only a fringe playoff contender at 12.
You basically need to think about just winning your division of your conference or your conference.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a huge line of demarcation. That's always a fun question. Really good stuff. All right, how about our next one?
So, Brandon is currently 2 for 3. That's doing better than his gambling picks so far, sports entertainment picks. How many times has South Carolina finished inside the nation's top 20 recruiting classes this decade?
Ooh, so decade takes us back to 2010, is that right, or 2011?
That's correct.
2010. Well, it wasn't under Spurrier because Spurrier quit on that program, completely stopped recruiting. But is it 0 though? Let me say they've had 1 since 2010. I'll say 1 since 2010.
GB2 comes in with 3 as C. Step Van Salter
Chuck Pearson says B.
0.
Elite GB is with me on that. Step Van Salter says A. I think you just said that. So I'm going to say they've had 1 since 2010. What's our answer?
Brandon, you're cutting the legs off the South Carolina.
Wow, they've had better.
South Carolina is actually on a 2-year run of 18th and 17th. That's the best stretch this decade. They've actually done it 5 times where they've been inside the top 20.
So I did not give them enough credit. I apologize for that.
Neat little thing there because you can kind of see what's a great recruiting year for Carolina versus what's a great recruiting year for Georgia. Number 5. Brandon's currently 2 for 2. Is that correct?
I think so.
2 and 2. Which one of these statements is not true about the South Carolina-Georgia or Georgia-South Carolina recruiting rivalry? B. The Gamecocks have at least 4 players the Bulldogs would have loved to sign under any circumstances.
Okay.
B. South Carolina has a higher all-time rated commitment than UGA on the 24/7 Sports all-time composite rankings. C. Georgia has flipped 4 South Carolina commits during the Kirby Smart era. You got one more.
Okay.
There's a D hanging around here somewhere. Do we have a D hanging around here somewhere? We don't have a D hanging around here somewhere. So it's probably not going to be D, whatever I had to offer.
Right. So I'm assuming that South Carolina does have a higher all-time rated commit because Jadeveon Clowney would obviously come to mind for that. 4 players that Georgia would love to have signed. They certainly have a couple. Sandage is one. Zach Pickens is another. You're going to say Jamias Williams. He's not on the roster anymore, I don't think. Helinski certainly one. So that gets you to 3. There's probably at least one more that I'm not thinking of. Has Georgia flipped 4 South Carolina commits during the Kirby Smart era? That doesn't seem right. I'm going to say the answer is C, that Georgia has not flipped 4 South Carolina commits. Was Warren McClendon ever a South Carolina commit?
He was
Maybe.
not.
Oh, he was not?
He was not.
So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Georgia's never flipped 4 South Carolina commits.
Just for grins and giggles, because the research staff did put in time on this, D was Jake Fromm has threw for 4,000 more passing yards in high school than Ryan Helinski did.
Well, that's nice.
That's actually true. Jake Fromm threw for about 12,800. Helinski was right at 8,100. But C, the one that's not correct is Georgia has flipped 4 South Carolina commits during the Kirby Smart era. Answer is C. Georgia's only flipped 3 commits during that time. Can you name them for me, sir?
I can't because I just tried to a minute ago.
The flipped commits were A, DJ Daniel.
There you go. I should have known that one, yeah.
Guy on the field. B, Devontae Wyatt.
Okay, I should have known that as well.
And C, this one is a tough one. If you folks had to get in your grab bag to get that one, but Georgia flipped Riley Ridley when he was.
I didn't know he used to be. I forgot that the Wyatt and the Daniel I should have got.
So nice little story here. This was while the All-American game was going on in 2016, when Jacob Eason and Mecole Hardman and Isaac Nada and Ben Cleveland were all in San Antonio. Riley Ridley takes a visit to Georgia late as a South Carolina commit and never leaves.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Enrolls early, boom, he flipped to Georgia.
How about our last question?
The last question, number 6, Brandon, and we do so try to make sure we do things exactly the way you want it.
No, you do how things you want.
When I hang out with you,
look at this.
When I hang out with you, sometimes I feel like I'm doing your security when we're out on. Connor and I were out around Knoxville, Tennessee.
That's not true.
We're meeting the people. C, we've gotten rid of the 2-packs, and we've just made it pretty clear.
All right.
Which person among the options below is not connected to the University of South Carolina or the city of Columbia?
Dustin Johnson, I believe, is from the Palmetto State. Stephen Colbert, I know is. Boggs, D'Antonio, I'm assuming they must be. That leaves us to Charlie Weiss and Young Jeezy.
Your game day picker, by the way.
That's right. So, isn't Jeezy from Atlanta? So let me say it's Charlie Weiss. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Let me correct myself. Jeezy, isn't he from Atlanta? I'm going to say Jeezy has no connection to South Carolina.
So first and foremost, I want everybody to weigh in on this. Is this the first time in the history of the world that the names Wade Boggs, Mark D'Antonio, Charlie Weiss, Young Jeezy, Stephen Colbert, and Dustin Johnson
That'd be quite a dinner party right
have
there.
all been mentioned in the same sentence?
That'd be quite a dinner party.
Brandon's going with Young Jeezy.
I'm going to go with Jeezy. That's what everybody else says. VTW says Jeezy is not from Atlanta. Excuse me on that then. As you might be able to surmise, I'm not a hip-hop expert. Christopher Perkins says A. That's Wade Boggs. Pete Ellis says D. He's also going Jeezy, the snowman there on that one. What is the correct answer?
Looking back at that right there, the correct answer, even though we got Brandon thinking about Stephen Colbert, he's from Charleston. He's not from South Carolina, the University of South Carolina.
So now we're taking people who are from South Carolina, but not the city of Charleston.
Whew. No. Look at this. Brandon, you're looking over the answer again, man. You must not have tested well on standardized testing.
That's tough.
Which person is not connected to South Carolina?
I didn't know the trivia was the LSAT.
Or the city of Columbia.
Yeah, by all means. All right, we are late here. We got like 1 minute of comments. Joel Moody says, I should love Wade Boggs. He ate chicken before every game. That is actually true. I knew that about that. Peter Jeffrey Wilson saying we're late. Yeah, in this case, we really are. G. Gray says that Jeezy's from Macon, Georgia. So at least I had the right state when it comes to that kind of stuff. Does anybody have any recruiting stuff they want to give us here? Final minute as part of our hurry up before we get ready to say go. Justin Ross Huggins laughed at me for saying, as you might be able to surmise, I'm not a hip-hop expert. Ro Hawkins, though, says he does like liver. Nobody's talking about recruiting stuff. Actually, Gene King does. He says, how many more commits can we take? We'll do that last one. How many commits can we take? He says by Georgia.
8. I think the number's 8.
Okay.
You get a little creative to get to that 8, but I think the number is 8.
Well, speaking of getting creative, we try to get creative with all of you here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger each and every week as well. And we appreciate you being a part of the program.
Let me ask you one. We got 33 seconds on the clock. Give the people what they paid for.
All right, for sure. Sure.
If Georgia can't get both tight ends in this class, what do you hope they do with that extra scholarship?
I like your idea of best player available, and I'm willing to concede whatever Georgia coaches think the best player is. I think you have some clear positions of need: 2 tight ends for me, 2 running backs, and if for some reason Theo Johnson just falls in love with the children of the corn up there or whatever else, then at that point in time, I'm totally fine with the best player available scenario.
I know your answer with this, so I'm going to eliminate running backs from this. Would you rather Georgia sign 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, or a 4th wide receiver?
I don't know that I want Georgia to sign 2 quarterbacks. And for me, the idea of 4th wide receiver is going to be player specific.
Would you rather Georgia sign 2 tight ends or 2 running backs?
2 backs. I love the 2 tight ends, but it's 2 running backs. I'm telling you, things happen slowly then suddenly in college football. One of these days, Georgia fans are going to blink their eyes and say, wow, it'd be great to have one more running back on this roster. I'm talking about 2-3 years in the future. It's the 2020 class when you make sure that doesn't end up happening. So really good stuff. Jacob O'Neill says, let's go, fellas. Let's go, Braves. He just says, go, good show, fellas. Let's go, Braves. And Jacob, I'm right there with you. Can't wait to watch the Braves here coming up in just a few minutes. We got some other stuff going on in the studio today, but we appreciate y'all allowing us to be your pregame show heading into, at least for those of you who live in the Atlanta area anyway, Game 5 of the Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals. Y'all enjoy the game. Jeff will see you this week in the forum at forum.dognation.com, and they're at dognation.com as well. Tomorrow morning from me, 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily. We'll talk to you then, everybody. Have a great day.